This is MJ. Welcome back to another exciting issue or episode of King of Hearts, Queen of Sorrows, where I'm talking about every single episode of Mobile Fighter G Gundam. This time I'm going to be out talking about episode 27 and reviewing, analyzing, whatnot. Here's your review. It was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. Nothing major happened as far as... It's a great instance of an episodic episode because it just has a little self-contained story with a little bit of an arc, great character moments, and that's about it because that's all it really needs. So the episode starts off with Domon and Rain. Basically starts off... Anyway, doesn't matter. There is a really great moment, or a couple of great moments when they're at this market with Hoi and Ming getting stuff for dinner, ingredients for dinner, groceries, if you will. And Domon feels like he's being watched. Of course, he is being watched by the boys, Chan and whatever, who they call Cha for some reason in the dub, which I don't understand. Anyway, so Cha and his buds, who are older than Hoi and Ming, are watching and looking at this, Gundam fighter, and they're jealous of the fact that Hoi does in fact know a Gundam fighter and gets to hang out with him, and they're called friends in this exchange here. But I think the most entertaining part of it to me is that these kids are in way over their head. They start the episode talking about like power points and or not power points, but like there's this fight between Zebra Gundam and Gundam Maxter, and the kids are talking about the rankings of the power as if everything is finite, and as if like the human spirit and grit and determination and will doesn't have anything to do with success. Like, of course, because Chibbity Crockett is one of the main series characters, he's not going to get beat by the pilot of Zebra Gundam, who I don't think we even ever see the guy who pilots Zebra Gundam. I mean, it could be a South African for all we know, right? But it's funny because the kids, they perceive the world in such a different way from, Domon and Rain because of the virtue that they're kids. And I like that the episode, it's okay with that. That's kind of part of the episode, is the difference between adults and kids. There may even be a theme here about perception versus reality because Cha, whatever, sees Domon as a weak Gundam fighter, and he erroneously believes in his, childish arrogance, which is totally natural, that Domon is so weak as a Gundam fighter that he could replace him, and he could himself be a Gundam fighter, and that leads him to get into the Gundam, and creates a tense situation, and causes Domon to be injured, and it has all these other effects throughout the episode. But it also kind of in the issue there, and the problem that's created or generated, there's also a solution that Domon is able to use because he has a different perspective on matters, and he's able to look at them with like a wider view or a different view than just Cha would have been able to look at on his own. Not that he was being called to, but just being more experienced and having a richer life to call upon. Domon's able to use the experience from earlier to figure out a way to go ahead and beat Sijiema of Neo-India. If you're looking at the video version right now, it's switched to this great image of Sijiema holding up his blade while Domon is paralyzed by his Cobra, which, interestingly enough, pretty much turns out to be his strategy in the matches, which I guess they pointed out directly when Rain had her laptop open, but I guess I didn't really catch it. The visual caught me when I watched it the first time through, and then only I kind of skimmed it to grab some images for GIFs and whatnot, and I picked that up on the next version, on the next time I watched. But something interesting that I meant to say earlier and that I will say now is that this episode rides this really interesting line between like kid world and adult world, because these kids are kind of getting caught up in this adult thing that they can't really deal with. They don't really understand. Like, for instance, when Domon feels like he's being watched, it's actually Sijiema who's watching him and not the boys, and he runs past them, and he goes over their heads literally, and it's kind of symbolic of the idea that he and Rain and everybody else are dealing with stuff so much beyond the kids. And that's not to take anything away from kids. It's just a fact, man. I have kids. They don't get certain things, and that's okay. I still love them, and it doesn't mean they're dumb. It's just that's not where they're at, and that's okay. Just this is a little bit of a tangent. I'll try not to go too far into it, but I watched the first 15 minutes of Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which begins, if you don't know, in the past and then catches up to the future, or Indy's present, I guess. And it was a lot of fun, and it felt like a good, clean boys' adventure, and that's the kind of the vibe I got from this. And like, I don't know that should be a genre, and I watched it with my eldest, who's a girl, and she enjoyed it pretty much. She was especially taken with certain elements of it, which she reproduced, because she's always crafting and making stuff. Anyway, but it was really cool that she was able to enjoy that with me. And I think the second one wandered into, and she liked it as well, at least a bit of it. But like, it's fun and energetic, and there's this great like spectacle to it, and like Williams' music was fantastic. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Last Crusade. I want to talk about this show. And, it's funny actually mentioning the music. Some of the music seems incongruent with the scene. Like, it has very sensual, like saxophone and stuff, and a lot of jazz in the background during certain scenes. And there's like a lot of piano used, even for like high tension situations, which I know you can get from a piano because it's a string instrument, and that's, violin is the like from Hitchcock slasher movie Psycho. Anyway, so like, I know strings can affect that kind of feeling, and that music can do that. But I find it funny that like Domon's just like casually working on the Gundam, and then the kids are there, and there's like this sexy jazz music going on with the saxophone. But maybe that's just because that's how saxophone reads to me. Yeah. Anyway, so just kind of talking about. That's just a bunch of generic stuff. But I will say, going back to that like spirit of fun and adventure, that one of my favorite things from this episode was the fact that Domon dislocates his shoulder in order to get out of the Cobra's bind, and then he does a left-handed burning finger, which was really cool. So yeah, like I said, spectacle. There's spectacle in this show, and that's a lot of fun. But there's also, there's a whole range of things. One last thing, and then I'm going to close out, is I found it very funny that Rain kind of comments that these children are Domon's friends. Like, it's a really, like, it kind of warms her heart. But at the same time, it also feels like, oh, this guy's like, and I know I'm watching a children's television show and devoting, hours, 20 hours or so to talking about it. But, I don't hang out with little kids except for my own. And I think it's a little weird when people do. But Domon's 20, and I don't know. It's just, it's kind of funny. It's pretty funny to me. But I have talked about Domon kind of being this man-child before, but that's not something I'm going to go into now. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up with a question. Does anybody find Sijiema being a green-skinned Indian man? Like, is that problematic? Is that racist? Is there some cultural context I'm missing? I get that he's a snake charmer, but like, is he a snake man himself? I don't know. Anyway, you can check out my other playlist for all the rest of King Hearts Queen of Sorrows. You can check out my Ultraman 2019 Netflix anime review playlist. There's the 13 episodes there, one review for each episode. And I've got lots of other stuff, tokusatsu reviews that I've done, comic book reviews, Star Wars comics, I'm working on those. And if you want to help support me and help fund my work, you can donate to me at coffee.com/MJ Munoz. Ciao.